Percents are a huge part of our everyday life. We use percents when we're shopping, when we're figuring things out, all kinds of ways that we use percents in our everyday life. So in this chapter, we're going to talk about a lot of those applications for percents. But first, let's talk about what percent means. Percent means over 100. Over 100. Or you could look at it as meaning part of 100, part of the whole, which we'll get to in a little bit. I want to show you different ways we can change or convert percents from fractions to decimals, or percent to decimals, or percent to fractions, all of those different conversions. So I'm going to give you several examples to show you how we do this. The first example, changing a percent to a fraction. This is one of the easiest methods. To change a percent to a fraction, like 88%, we put the number over 100 and then reduce our fraction. So put it over 100 and then reduce. So 88 over 100 reduces to 22/15. That's a pretty easy one. Now let's talk about percent fractions, or fractional percents, you may say them. Whenever we have a percent that has a fraction in it. Now, this has a lot of steps. I wrote out all the steps for the first one for you so you could follow along very carefully this first time. Since percent means over 100, I took my 37.5 and I put that over 100. Step one. Second step. Since a fraction means to divide, fractions always mean division, I divided by the 100. So 37.5 divided by my 100. Third step, actual working out that division. How do we divide fractions? We multiply the reciprocal. So I changed 37.5 to an improper fraction, and then I multiplied my reciprocal. Now we can cross cancel. What goes into 75 and 100? 25. 3 times, 4 times. So 3/8. So changing 37.5% to a fraction is actually the same as 3/8. Now let's see if we can write out the steps for 1/8%. All right, let's think through it carefully. Since 1/8% means 1/8 over 100. Remember, you can have a fraction in a fraction. So that's step one. Step two, we're going to divide 1/8 divided by 100. And third step, our actual division times our reciprocal. So this ends up being 1 over 800. That would be a very small amount, wouldn't it? If you have 1/8 of a percent of a pizza, that's not very much pizza. Okay, let's go on to number 2. Changing a percent to a decimal. A percent to a decimal. To do this, if you have 8%, you move your decimal back 2 places. So you don't have to really do any work for this one at all. Since 8 is a whole number, I move my decimal back 2 places and I have 0.08. I had to add in a 0 right here. So percent to decimal, simply move your decimal place back 2 places. Okay, number 3, changing a mixed number percent to a decimal. Okay, we already did the fraction. Now we're going to change it to a decimal. And this one's fairly simple too. All right, let's take 32.1/4%. First, we want to move the decimal back 2 places. Okay, 32 is our whole number, so our decimal is here to start. Move the decimal back 2 places, so 0.32. That's the first thing. Second thing we do is to change our fraction into a decimal. Okay, our fraction is 1/4. I want you to think, what is 1/4 as a decimal? 0.25, right? So that most of those you will know. If you don't know that, remember you can always divide 1/4 and get your decimal 0.25. So then we just take our 2/5, just the 2/5, and stick it on the end of our 0.32, and that is our decimal form. All right, so we moved a decimal back 2 places, and then we changed our fraction to its decimal form and added that on the end. Okay, number 4, changing a decimal to a percent. This is another simple one that doesn't require any work. A decimal to a percent, we move the decimal forward 2 places, so it goes forward because we're multiplying by 100. So this would be from 2.4, moving the decimal forward would be 240%. Remember, we're changing it to the percent, 240%. And this last one, number 5, changing a fraction to a percent. This one requires a little more work, probably the most work of any of them. To do this, we have to divide our fractions. So 3/20ths, we would divide 3 by 20 and start working that out. 1 time, 20 goes into 30 and 10, bring down a 0, 20 goes in there 5 times and stops. So after we divide, then we move our decimal forward 2 places. So that would be 15%. So see, this one does require a little more work. You have to do 2 steps. Divide, we'll put a 1 here, and then move the decimal forward 2 places. All right, let's work out 7/12. So we need to divide 7 by 12. Okay, 7 won't be divided by 12, so we need to add our decimal and our 0. 12 goes into 75 times, which would be 60, and 10. Subtract, add a 0. 12 goes into 100. How many times? 12 goes into 100 8 times. 12 times 8 is 96. So 4. Bring another decimal. 12 goes into 40 how many times? 3, which is 36. Gonna run out of room. Oh, and I get a 4. So what do we see here? 4, 4. The 3 is going to repeat. Okay, now we divided. What's the next step? Move the decimal forward 2 places. So this would be 58.3%. 58.3%. All right, I want you to work out 5/8. Pause the video for a minute while you do that, and then turn it back on. We'll see if you did it right. Okay, so 8 doesn't go into 5, so we have our decimal, our 0. 8 goes into 50 6 times, which is 48. 20. 8 goes into 22 times, 16. 8 goes into 40 5 times. Okay, that's the first step. Don't forget the second part, moving your decimal over. So this would be 62.5%, and add your percent sign on the end. Okay, so now I know we did lots of different procedures in this section. I know it can be confusing. Go back over each one, look at them, focus on the hardest ones for you, probably this number 5.